Hey everybody!
Everybody! That was so weird.
I don't have no idea where that came from.
I was channeling some children's cartoon.
Maybe.
Hey everybody!
Oh my god, you did sound like...
I have no idea.
Hi
Hey everyone!
So, we're back today for another What We Read. It has been a very long time since we did one,
And she has read so much compared to me.
We are going to try to quickly go through all of these books.
Snappy and sweet, but also...
Because I want to try and get as many of them wrapped up before the end of the year as possible.
Agreed. Alright, here we go.
Okay, so first on my list is Bucket List to Love by C.P. Santi. This is a romance class book, which means that this book is written by a Filipino author. The story is essentially about a girl named Aya who gets the opportunity to study abroad in Tokyo, and while she's there she meets this guy and they sort of have a romance, but also alongside that her sisters have made a bucket list for her and encouraged her to cross items off it. So this is a pretty cute story. It's not the most amazing romance I've read, and in fact I kind of wish it were a little longer so that we'd have more time to develop all of the things that are going on between these two characters and in their individual lives. But overall, it was just what I needed at the time that I read it, which was something like light and fluffy and quick and like cute. And I'm glad I finally read this one because it's been on my TBR for quite some time. Next, we have two books in the series. I reread The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell, and I also read The Devil's Thief by Lisa Maxwell, which is the sequel that came out this year. The Last Magician is about a girl named Esta, and she travels back in time to around the 1900s in New York because she has to obtain this artifact that her boss needs in order to change the fate of all mages or magic users in New York City, since they're all trapped in Manhattan at this point. She finds out that there's more than meets the eye to her boss's request, and she starts digging into that, and whole conspiracy happens in this one. The effects of that conspiracy and that big event are in this one, and both books are so good. They're the immersive kind of story where you really have to concentrate on the details and what's being given to you by the author in order to really like get into this story. I still think the first book is a little bit stronger and also a little bit more engaging than the second one, but there are things that happen in the second one that literally had me like, I wanted to like say something so badly, but it's like one of those things where I can't spoil it for other people, so obviously who am I going to talk to but only people who have read it. So would I recommend reading this one? Yes. They are an investment of your time because they're both quite chunky, but they're so good. They're so different from anything I've read recently, and I really, really love that. We're back to something a little bit lighter for the next book, and that is Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. This book is about Hazel, who's sort of a quirky individual that is not necessarily everyone else's cup of tea, and Josh, who is the brother of her best friend, and their paths sort of have crossed in college before, and they kind of wrote each other off a little, and then they meet again as adults and they strike up this friendship, and the entire book has them going on a series of blind dates only to realize that maybe they're more attracted to each other. Perfect romantic comedy fodder. I enjoyed their banter, I enjoyed their friendship, I thought it was really well done, and the build-up was really fun. The one thing that docked this one an entire star almost for me is the way it ends, because I personally was not a fan of how that ended. I didn't want it to go in that direction, but it did, and I can see why some people might enjoy that, but personally for me I was just like, didn't have to go there, but we did. So the next entire set of books that I read was the entirety of the Throne of Glass series. So The Assassin's Blade, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, Queen of Shadows, Empire of Storms, Tower of Dawn, and of course Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. And was that an investment of my time? Sure. I spent nearly a week reading this entire series. Am I mad about it? No. The entire series begins with an assassin named Selena being rescued from the mines of Endovier and brought to the castle in order to compete in this competition to become the king's champion. While she's there, she uncovers the fact that there's a lot of other things going on, magical things, and she has to figure out what to do and how to save the good people in this story before it hits its end. And the story has grown so much from there, and I wish I could tell you guys like full-on details for the rest of the series, but I can't do that without spoiling Mackie, so I'm not going to. But suffice to say, like, it builds into this crazy epic story where there is way more going on for this entire world when it comes to this magic. There are so many characters that come in and come into play and have different things to bring to the story, and I have to say that the way it all wraps up in Kingdom of Ash is so damn impressive. Like, I enjoyed A Court of Wings and Ruin, which is the series finale of her other series, but I loved this book so much. It was emotional, it was action-packed, it was like everything I wanted it to be and I didn't know I wanted it to be.
I was crying late.
I like hysterically sobbed my way through 3/4 of this book. No big. It was just
says.
so amazing, and I loved it so much, and I already want to reread it, but also I'm terrified of the emotional trauma that would leave me with, so I'm not going to do that just yet. But suffice to say that this series has cemented itself as one of my all-time favorites, so definitely check it out if you haven't already. The last thing for this section is The Chase, which is another book on the lighter side, and this one's by Elle Kennedy. It's part of the spin-off series for the Off-Campus series. So it's about Summer De Laurentiis, who is actually the younger sister of one of the main guys in the other series, and one of his former roommates, Colin Fitzgerald, otherwise known as Fitzy. And these two have a thing for each other, but they didn't want to admit it, and then when it finally comes to a breaking point, it doesn't go quite as planned, and so there's a lot of like, will they, won't they in this story, and enter the complication that Summer ends up being one of their roommates and also starts dating one of the other guys that shares their house. Makes things even more complicated. And again, it's one of those like fun contemporary reads that is quick and easy, and definitely was the kind of mood booster I needed after reading such a like emotionally traumatizing book like Kingdom of Ash. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it nearly as much as I love the other series, but I will definitely keep reading the rest of this spin-off series because Elle Kennedy is great and her writing is fun, and she's really good at banter, which I always enjoy in a romance. That's part 1 done.
We'd like to interrupt Alexa's reading stuff with some of mine. I want to start with The Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. If you've seen the haul, I obviously said this was the crowning achievement of my life as a tabletop gamer. Mostly because as a kid, you grew up kind of playing Magic the Gathering. My favorite expansion was the Ravnica series, and what happened was, I think because Wizards of the Coast sort of owns everything now, they decided, hey, let's make the next like big story for Dungeons and Dragons be based off of Ravnica, which is amazing. Ravnica is a plane completely covered in cities, governed by something called a guild pack, which sort of makes sure that all the guilds sort of harmoniously coexist. Every guild brings something to the society, and every guild is a combination of two of Magic's colors, red, white, black, green, and blue. And this guide is just so chock full of lore, and I'm sure there is a magic card for just about everything out here on this thing. It inspired me so much to reread the first set of Ravnica books, which was based on the first set of expansions that came out, that I actually read and bought and started reading the first 3 books. So you'll see I'm flashing the other book now. So finish these 2. It's a great read. So what's cool about this book, I mean, buy it if you love Ravnica. It's got status blocks, meaning the information on all of the guild heads, basically. For some of them, they're different from when you started out with Ravnica. And now we see who the successors are. Now we see who's stuck around like crazy. So very, very fun. Highly recommend it. It's just so lovely. I can't wait to play this. So
I can't wait to play it either. Back to me. I read 2 books in the London Celebrity series by Lucy Parker. The first one is called Act Like It. The second one is called Pretty Face. In Act Like It, 2 actors, Richard and Lainey, they are set up to fake date in order to repair Richard's reputation because he's kind of got a temper, and so at first they're very antagonistic towards each other and they just absolutely do not like each other. And obviously, because this is a contemporary romance, they discover that there's more to the other person than meets the eye, and they sort of fall in love, and well, not sort of, they fall in love. And it's just really fun to read. Like it took me a while to get into it, but once I was into it, I was like hooked and I needed to know what was going to happen next. I'm not necessarily fond of how it resolved itself in the end either, but I did enjoy it a lot. So much so that I went straight into reading the second one, which is Pretty Face. This one I absolutely adored. It's about Luke and Lily, and in this one Lily is kind of being typecast into different roles because of her voice and like how she looks, and she really wants to make it onto the London stage in a play, and Luke is a director and he cast her in his new show that is supposed to like make a splash for this theater that he's renovating. And so these 2 are technically not supposed to get involved because it's kind of like, I guess it's considered like a taboo for like a director and the main, like one of his main actresses to be in a relationship. Ideally you don't want to do that because you don't want to like shit where you work, you know what I mean? But it's just so cute just to watch them try to like resist the temptation of like falling in love with each other. It's just so adorable and I really enjoyed that, and I'm so looking forward to reading the third one. I actually read this novella when it was still an e-novella, but it was released last year as a hardcover with illustrations, and it is Night of Cake and Puppets by Laini Taylor, which is illustrated by her husband Jim DeBartolo. I just love this one. It made me want to reread the entire Daughter of Smoke and Bone series, which I haven't done since the first time I read it, really. This is a novella that focuses on a secondary character, Susanna, and her first date with Mick, who is the guy she's in a relationship with in the series. And it's just so adorable. It's just the perfect blend of like that teen romance that you want, but also with actual magic. So it's freaking awesome. I love the illustrations. I thought it was great, and I'm so glad I finally read it. Next, we have something I was very excited to get to, The Darkest Star by Jennifer Lynn Armentrout. This is the first in her new series, which is a spin-off from her Luck series. And in this one, it's about a girl named Evie who is basically thrown into the world of the Lux after she goes to a party at a Lux club. There's a lot that goes down in this one, and I kind of can't say a lot about it without really spoiling the first series, but suffice to say, it's another stellar paranormal adventure from Jennifer Lynn Armentrout. I love the banter in it. I think the main couple are so great, and like I just need them to get their shit together and like get together, because honestly, it's taking them so long. But I quite enjoyed it. I am looking forward to seeing where it goes, and I can't wait to read the sequel when it's out next year. I read a book on the recommendation of Kristen from Super Space Chick, and it's The Lying Woods by Ashley Elston. Kristen really loves this author, and she says that I also need to read This Is Our Story, which is one of this author's other books. It is about a boy named Owen, and he has to go back to his hometown to live with his mom and I think his aunt, after they find out that his dad has been stealing money from the employees of his family's huge company, and that's where all the money for all of the things, like the vacations and the houses and everything, and his boarding school even, that's where it's been coming from. And so he has to move back to this town where everyone basically hates them now for what has happened, because it was basically the sole or biggest business in that town, and like him taking all the funds meant that everyone was in trouble. I thought it was going to be more of a thriller mystery, but really it's more like a contemporary with a little hint of mystery. Owen is trying to unravel like what is going on, like is it true that his dad did this thing? Why did his dad do this thing? At the same time, you also get the parallel story of years ago in the same town about his father and his mother. And it's just fascinating to see how everything builds and builds and builds. And like, I didn't really know where it was gonna go until it got there, and I was like, once it got there, I was like, oh, this makes perfect sense. Everything is really laid out for you from start to finish, and it's just like, she just does it in a way where it's so, like, it doesn't arouse your suspicions or notice even, and you kind of just like, once it's put together, you're like, whoa, I should have known that, because that's literally everything she said. So it was really good, it was really compelling. I read it in a night, if that's like any indication of how much I was into it. So I'm glad I finally read a book by this author.
Awesome.
And then the last thing for the section is a book I am very excited about, Kingdom of the Blazing Phoenix by Julie C. Dow. This is the companion to last year's Forest of a Thousand Lanterns. And in this one, we follow the Snow White character of the story, Princess Jade. She's been living in exile for a while, and then she gets recalled to go back to the palace by her stepmother, which is not a great thing because her stepmother is very ambitious and cunning, and obviously it can't bode well that she wants Jade back in her, like, clutches. Jade ends up being forced to flee and to go on this quest in order to retrieve all these artifacts that she needs in order to summon a greater power that will help save her kingdom. I really enjoyed this one. I am a sucker for quest books, and that alone was enough to get me interested in reading this one, even though I already wanted to after reading last year's Forest of a Thousand Lanterns. But it was just so fun to read about Jade's quest. It was so cool to see all of this like mythology come into play, and I got really emotional towards the end of this, so yeah, that's how much I was invested in all these characters. So I'm very excited that I enjoyed this one. Cannot recommend this duology enough, so definitely check it out.
So we pretty much blitzed through that because this is part one of our two-part what we read, right? Because there's just been so many books, and so we're gonna end this video just sort of with my tiny little kind of bid for the Adventurers Guild of the second book in the series called Twilight of the Elves. So this is just the arc. This is actually out already. It was out in November, and it's part two of a series set in a world post-apocalyptic, I want to say. And there's a town that has stood tall against one of the dark evil things that are out there trying to kill everything. and they have different guilds who you make sure that the town's fine. Almost kind of a fun way to lob this and the Ravnica kind of Dungeons and Dragons, because this is definitely an homage to Dungeons and Dragons. There's so many Dungeons and Dragons elements here.
That's cool.
That if you've never played, that's fine. It's still a really fun read. But if you have played, you'll see that it's almost, I feel like it's almost a love song to that, because there's so many allusions. It's a great big adventure. It builds on the events of the first book, when our gaggle of characters are finally more renowned for what they did in the first book, obviously, for those who survived. Haha, no spoilers. But now you're going to be thinking, did they die? No, anyway, point is, whoever carried over from the first books are now obviously still the main characters here, and they are making even more waves, and this ends in the most annoyingly cliffhangery way. Can I just say it is the most second book of all second books, because you enjoy it so much and you're like, oh, of course you're gearing towards the third, and it's still centered on Zed and Brock, who are best friends. One of them is half elven and the other one is, I think, completely human. I swear to God, it's almost a game to see which one plays which character class, like which one's the rogue, which one's the warrior, which one's the mage.
That's fun.
And to have them go through yet another adventure that saves the world, and then have this terrible, annoying cliffhanger, is just, it's such a book too. It's very Empire. Please give us Jedi, because that's how, like, we need the third installment already. So and just like Empire, arguably, I think it's the best one in the series. As people have surmised, Empire is the best one in all three. Blah blah blah. Everyone has different opinions, but this is great. It's definitely an improvement. It's a great book too, and I highly recommend book 1 and 2 to anybody who cares. It's a great middle grade read, so very, very much. And the covers are cool too. You don't see it here, but the new covers are pretty darn cool. Spoilery, by the way, Barnes & Noble, I saw you today, or was it the other day, what the cover of this thing was, and I'm just like, why would you print it that way? Anyhow.
So there you have it, part 1 of this week's 2-part What We Read. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments on any of the books that we read, we would love if you leave them down below. And if you are expecting us to read anything or want us to read anything you've seen in a
yeah, we've been pretty good.
Feel free to say that.
We've been pretty good about picking stuff up, so
I've been reading a lot of exciting things, so I'm very excited to share them at some future What We Read. So, until next time, we'll see you guys soon. Bye!